All right, so this is the digestive system laid out. If you look at it, if you took the digestive system and stretched it out end to end, you would be able to start with the mouth and it would go all the way to the anus. And of course, this is not to scale, as you saw when you did the thing with the yarn, right? The portion of this drawing that represents the small intestine is nowhere near as long as it really is. But this is great not for learning the anatomy, but for learning the physiology of what's happening at each portion. So you need to have, I would recommend at least 3, maybe 4 colors, maybe a highlighter. Okay, and so I'm going to pause because you're going to want to write down chemical digestion in one color, mechanical digestion processes in another color, maybe label the diagram in a different color. So I will pause here for a minute. If you're rewatching the video, you would want to pause it and get all your stuff together, okay? Okay, so hopefully you have your colors, the pens, and everything. And we're going to start off by labeling the parts of this diagram. And of course, it's not anatomically correct. It is not drawn to scale by any means. Okay, so I'm going to just start drawing. And I can make my picture bigger, which is really nice. I'm just going to start off by, using, I'll start off by just using, I want a color that kind of stands out a little bit. So I'll use purple so it stands out a little bit. So this area here, at the very beginning, you would have like extra teeth there. The diagram got cut off. Okay, so this is your oral cavity. Can you even see that at all? Yeah. Okay. You're going to want to write small so that you can fit in as much as possible. This would be the esophagus. And if you say esophagus, you will spell it correctly. Yes. You can choose whatever colors you want. I'm choosing purple just so it kind of comes off the paper rather than just using black. Okay. On my diagram, this is actually in blue. Okay. So after the esophagus, what would be the next major organ we would encounter? The stomach. Then we would encounter next the small intestine. And then we would have the large intestine. And these accessory organs here would be the liver, the pancreas, and I'll write it sideways, the gallbladder, so those are your main structures that we encounter. Okay, so the very first thing that happens is the process of ingestion. And ingestion just literally means putting food into your mouth, right? And after ingestion, you have 2 processes that begin: chemical digestion and mechanical digestion. Okay, so we'll start off with, we'll stick with, how about red for the chemical digestion processes, and I'll go blue for mechanical, okay? So, blue. So, teeth do the chewing. And there's a fancy term for chewing, mastication. I know, that's a funny word, isn't it? I like to teach people that you all masticate. Masticating is completely normal. It's accepted. You don't need to be embarrassed about masticating. Now, if you masticate with your mouth open, that could be a little bit embarrassing. You don't want to talk while you masticate. You masticate in public. You can do it in public. You can do it when you're alone, too. You prefer it? What you're masticating right now in front of all of us. So someone who has chewed is a masticator. None of you need to be embarrassed about mastication. It is, I mean, it's completely normal. It's important, right? Okay. So mastication, and I think I put that as one of the words on the Quizlet terms. You guys saw I put up a Quizlet, right? Okay. All right, so we have teeth for chewing and your tongue. Usually your tongue stays out of the way during mastication. Although if your tongue gets in the way, oh man, you'll chomp right down on top of it, and that is so painful. The good news is your mouth heals really quickly because of the potential for bacteria, pathogens to, have open access to your body. So you want to be able to heal up those wounds in your mouth really, really quickly. So your tongue is responsible for moving and mixing. Okay? Okay, moving and mixing the food around. I wish I could, you know what? I bet you I can make this bigger. Let's see. I'm going to try to mess with my screen and make it bigger. Okay, so I made our screen. Let's see. I made our screen big, and I am trying to get back to my image that I had captured, which is now small. There we go. Okay, so that's what we had so far. But if I go back to that, it's still small. Well, I was hoping to be able to make it bigger here, but if I start messing with it, it's gonna... Can you guys read this okay? Yes. Okay, good. Then I won't worry about it. All right, so ingestion processes. Ingestion, now we want to talk about, I'm going to switch to red because we're going to talk about chemical digestion. So again, our blue color, our blue is mechanical digestion. And our red is going to represent chemical digestion. So mechanical digestion is going to be like the physical moving things around. And yes, you have that starting in the mouth, but you also have chemical digestion starting in the mouth. And chemical digestion occurs with the saliva. And you have salivary amylase. And because it has that ASE ending, you know that is an enzyme, and it breaks down starch. So I'm just going to write starch because I don't want your paper to get too messy. But what I want you to remember is that ASE ending, all of those ASE endings, means that it's enzymes, okay? And it's responsible for a chemical breakdown, okay? Okay, remember it's chemical breakdown. So Amyl, A-M-Y-L, means starch. So salivary amylase breaks down starch. And if you put something starchy in your mouth, like a piece of bread or a chip or a saltine cracker, and if you can just chew and chew and chew on it, you'll notice, especially with a saltine cracker, it starts out tasting pretty bland. And then the longer it's in your mouth, it'll get sweet. And you aren't really aware of this because usually we don't chew on a saltine cracker all by itself, and we don't chew on it for a long period of time. We don't keep it in our mouth. And so people who get a lot of cavities, a lot of times they aren't candy eaters. They're people who eat a lot of breads and stuff because the bread gets stuck up in the crevices, and without good brushing and flossing, it sits in there, and then the bacteria in your mouth, as your salivary amylase breaks it down into sugars, the bacteria in your mouth use that sugar as their food source, and the bacteria release acid as a waste product. The acid sits on the enamel of your teeth and wears down the enamel and creates a cavity in which to live, and that's what cavities are. Holes basically in your teeth created by the bacteria. So if you like your breads and crackers and stuff like that, it's not the sugars you got to worry about, it's the breads and stuff that sticks in your teeth. So brush, 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 floss, floss, floss. Even if you have braces, you're supposed to floss. Which is hard, but not impossible. Okay, so now I'm going to switch back to purple because I am going to be labeling more structures. So these things represent the salivary glands. So you have the parotid salivary gland, and then this one was supposed to be the submandibular, and this one was supposed to be the sublingual. Don't forget the tongue. And how long food spends in your mouth is just a matter of how well you chew your food. What color should we make the food? Make it brown? That'll be perfect because as it goes through, it'll be brown. Okay, so here's our ball of food. Okay? At this point, what do we call the ball of food that's in our mouth that we swallow? Yeah. Submandibular and sublingual. What do we call the ball of food that exits? Oh, no. That exits our mouth. It's called a bolus. B-O-L-U-S. Okay, so the bolus of food exits the mouth. Yep, that's what it's called. Okay, and it travels down the esophagus. It spends about 9 seconds in the esophagus. Okay, what pushes that bolus of food down the esophagus? The tongue helps with swallowing, but your esophagus has these waves of contractions. Okay, these waves of contractions continue all the way through. And we're usually not aware of those waves of contractions unless you have intestinal cramps, right? Not menstrual cramps. Intestinal cramping, like you've got food poisoning. This is called peristalsis. Okay, peristalsis. The waves of contraction that is moving the food down through your entire GI tract, gastrointestinal. What kind of muscle lines your GI tract? Smooth muscle, okay? So these are smooth muscle contractions. There's your vocabulary term, peristalsis. So are they under voluntary or involuntary control? Involuntary control. What happens if the peristalsis goes in the dirt? Notice I drew an arrow showing the direction of the contraction. What happens if it goes in the wrong way? You vomit. Okay? You would vomit if you had something in your stomach that your body detected immediately, like there was a toxin, there was something wrong, or the lining of your stomach was irritated because of a bacterial or viral infection. And so your body says, uh-oh, there's something wrong here, and it wants to get it out of your body as quick as possible. And the quickest route is right back out the hole it came in. And so that's why you vomit. If the food makes it past the stomach and it's into the intestinal tract, typically with food poisoning, very little of it gets into your intestine. You vomit right away. If you've got bona fide food poisoning, you vomit within an hour. Watch out for the shrimp at the buffet. Shrimp and eggs will do it to me every time. I'm like the canary in the coal mine. Do you know what that phrase means? Okay, coal miners used to take a canary in a cage down into the coal mine. And if the canary died, that meant that the air quality was really bad and they ought to leave. Because the canary was a little bit more sensitive, so it was their warning sign. So when the canary bites the dust, we better get out of here. Well, I'm that person at a buffet. If Brenda gets sick, we don't eat at the buffet anymore because that means the food quality is not what it should be. So there are several buffets now in Long Beach we no longer eat at because this canary, within 2 hours of coming home from said buffet, was praying to the porcelain god. Okay, so if toxins from a bacteria in your food gets into your stomach's going to be like, oh, we got to get this out of here before it causes any more damage, and it ejects it right back out. Now, a stomach virus, that's when you're going to have more like the diarrhea and stuff. You may get a little bit of diarrhea with your food poisoning, but typically you get it out right away, and then you're usually pretty good. But if you've got a virus that's inflamed and irritated the wall of your intestine, that's when you're going to have extra strong intestinal contractions, and that's when you get, diarrhea. So what do you take for that? You take Imodium, which is a medication that slows down the waves of peristalsis. Because no matter how much cramping you have, it's not going to get rid of the virus. You just have to wait for your immune system to attack it and fight it off. We've learned how that happens with all of these viral infections, that your immune system fights it off naturally. So you get sick in the meantime, which is the symptoms of the viral infection. Okay. As food moves into the esophagus, I guess that would be the end of first lunch? Okay. Or, yeah. So now, we're going to be into the stomach. And inside of your mouth, you have mucus. So part of your saliva is mucus. You have mucus in your esophagus, and you have mucus lining the walls of your stomach. So, I don't know. I think a good mucus color is green. Whatever green you want. You don't even have to use my colors. You don't even have to make it a different color. Okay. Shh. So we got mucus there. And mucus is lining all the way up so that things slide really easily. Why would you have mucus? Why would you have mucus in your stomach? What's another reason to have mucus in your stomach? Yes, to protect your stomach lining from acid. So you have special cells called goblet cells. Okay, so the mucus is there to protect. It's secreted by those muscles. And a ulcer, you guys have heard of ulcers, right? Ulcers are where, two reasons. First of all, extra stomach acid can wear out the lining of the stomach, that mucus lining. And so then your acid from your gastric glands can actually start digesting into your stomach wall and causing bleeding. Interestingly, blood in your feces doesn't come out looking red like blood. It looks like coffee grounds. So, if you ever have fecal material, poo, stool, another name for it, if you ever have that looking and it looks like you've got coffee grounds, or your feces starts to look like this strange, dark, brownish, reddish color. Different foods can do this to you. You know, you can eat a lot of guacamole and a lot of spinach and have things kind of come out green. Okay, so, but the colors, hot Cheetos, I don't know. Do a lot of hot Cheetos make it a color? Make it red. Do they really make it red? Really? That's interesting because that means you can't. So here, true story. When I was dating my husband, and one of the first dinners I made for him was this Indian chicken with with this red marinade on it. And the night after he had had dinner at my house, he sent me an email. This is before texting, okay? Sent me an email and said, "Hey, it was the next morning. Did that chicken do anything to your stomach?" And I was like, "No, I was fine." I'm like, "Oh my God, you didn't get food poisoning?" And he's like, "No, it's fine." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And I was like, "Okay, weird." Well, later on that day, because my gastrointestinal tract is not as fast as his, later on that day when I did my business, it was bright red. And I was like, "Holy moly, wow." And I was like, that's what he was talking about. And then I realized, oh my God, it was like dinner, and the next morning he had already, and how fast does food go through your intestinal tract? Oh my gosh. So I called him that night and I'm like, "Dude, it was already like 8:30 in the morning and you'd already like pooped? What the, and then like the science teacher in me comes out and he's like, "Yeah." And I go, then he goes, "Yeah, I do that. I go to the bathroom like 3 times a day." And I was like, that is not normal. What the heck? Some people poop that many times a day. Some people do. So it has to do with how much you drink and especially how much caffeine. He was a huge Coke drinker. So I said, "Oh, well, we've got to do an experiment. When you come over for dinner tonight," and he's like, "Okay." So I fed him a bunch of corn because corn, you can't digest the outside of a corn kernel. So I said, "Dude, you eat like 3 ears of corn." Because I want him to have a lot of corn in his digestive tract. And I said, "You've got to send me an email tomorrow morning as soon as you see the corn. I want to time it. It's 7 o'clock. You're eating the corn now. I want to know when you see the corn again." So I get an email the next morning. 8:30. First corn sighting, 8:30. At 11 o'clock, second corn sighting. 11, and I'm like, oh my God, you've got the fastest metabolism ever. True story. I have put my husband through so many anatomy tests. It's so sad. Okay, so I hope you find that humorous. I think it's funny. All right, so when we look at the wall of our stomach, so I'm going to draw a little closer view. So this is an enlarged view of what our stomach lining looks like. Okay? And the stomach lining has these folds called rugae. Okay, you guys back with me? Or are you still talking about poop? Everybody poops. It's You know what? It's important, and this is true. We had a lady here that that worked in the library years ago who died of colon cancer. There is her name was Nancy Thompson, and she died of colon cancer because a lot of times they don't find it until it's progressed and it's spread to other organs. It's very important that you learn what's normal for your body. How appearance, texture, frequency, even odor. Because drastic changes, if you haven't changed your diet, and then all of a sudden you have some drastic changes, you need to say, what's going on with my body? Now, you guys aren't in the high risk group for having colon cancer. That definitely is something that changes as you get older. But it's important that you know what's normal for you. All joking aside. All right, so if we look at the wall of the stomach, we have these folds called rugae. Those rugae are the folds. And why do we have those folds? Well, if you look at the underside of like a blue whale or a humpback whale, they have folds on their throat area so that when they take those big scoop mouthfuls of water and fish, that it all stretches out. That's the same reason we have the folds in our stomach. Form meets function. Your stomach has to be able to stretch every time you eat. Now, a really stretched out stomach can accommodate up to 2 liters. That's a 2-liter bottle. You guys know, a 2-liter bottle. Your stomach can stretch out as much as a 2-liter bottle. Now, if you regularly eat really large meals, you're going to have a stomach that can stretch. But if you are a light eater, you don't have to eat very much and your stomach feels full. I always say that a good case of the stomach flu is a great way to start a diet. Because after like 3 days of really not being able to eat much, your stomach kind of shrinks and then you can't eat a whole lot. And if you just kept eating like that, you'd lose weight. Intermittent fasting is, yeah. Yeah, intermittent fasting, skipping for several days is different than deciding not to eat like in the evenings. And okay. Intermittent fasting means you don't fast for days and days and days. You fast at different times of the day, and you eat. Yeah, so like one of the great, if you're trying, none of you guys are trying to lose weight, but like for me, it would be something like I wouldn't eat after 3:00 in the afternoon. And you eat, you can eat things like little bits, like a handful of nuts or something like that. There are certain things you can eat. All right, let's not get sidetracked though. Okay. In the stomach, we have 3 layers of muscles, okay? The layers of muscles, so the rugae, that is the internal layer. Then you have 3 layers of muscles that go around that, okay? You have 1 layer of muscle. So you have 1 layer of muscle that is in this direction, okay? Horizontal. That layer of muscle helps to move the food through the stomach. You have another layer of muscle that goes perpendicular to that, which helps mix vertically. And the third layer of muscle is diagonal, so that you can have mixing in 3 different ways. And so you're never aware of this unless your stomach's empty, and you know the gurgling feeling we get when our stomach gurgles. So that's because now your stomach's empty. There's nothing in there. So if you're feeling really, really hungry, I get kind of nauseated when I feel really hungry and my stomach starts to churn. If I just drink a glass of water, just put something in there for my stomach to mix up, it doesn't feel so bad until I can, it kind of like fakes my body out and says, okay, here's something to work on. Throw a cracker in, throw something small in. Okay, I need to do now red because we're going to talk about what gets digested in the stomach. So we're going to talk about chemical digestion. So The layers of muscles, that's kind of mechanical, right? For mixing. Then we have chemical digestion. So we have, first of all, that's not the right color red, is it? That's kind of neon. It's a nice red. Can you see it? Okay, so we have gastrin. Hydrochloric acid. And pepsin. So gastrin, hydrochloric acid, HCl, which lowers your pH, and pepsin. Okay, gastrin is a hormone. And pepsin is an enzyme. And it breaks down proteins. Oh, that's great. Pepsin can only work at a low pH. That's why you have to have the hydrochloric acid. And you can use this as a page in your notebook.
Yes.
You could use it for a left-hand side, or you could use it for notes.
How about we just make a photocopy of these?
No, you can't double dip. But you could turn all of this into Cornell Notes and rewrite it. No. I'm always trying to help you guys out. Okay, so you know how they say if you drink on an empty stomach, you know when you have a friend that's drunk and had too much to drink, which I know none of you ever drink because you're not 21 yet. But let's say you go to college and you have somebody that's had too much to drink and you're trying to sober them up. So you're like, oh, you didn't eat anything. Here, eat something, eat something. It doesn't work because being drunk and feeling the effects of alcohol, the alcohol has already gotten into your bloodstream. When you have to eat is before, okay? Nothing gets absorbed through your stomach except for alcohol. Goes straight through the wall of your stomach. So that's why when you're drinking on an empty stomach, it gets into your bloodstream faster. Because there's no food in your stomach. So eating after you're already feeling it isn't going to help. Okay? The key is you don't drink that way. You don't drink to get drunk. In fact, there's just another kid at UCI who died of alcohol poisoning. You can drink so much that it kills you. No, the problem is that if you drink enough alcohol really, really quickly, by the time you would feel the buzz, you already have so much alcohol in your system. And you guys, if you ever have a friend who has passed out drunk, they're probably going to vomit, and they may even vomit while they're unconscious. Never leave them just laying. Kids die in colleges and everywhere else every year from asphyxiating, choking to death on their own vomit. If you can't stay with that person, prop them up using pillows on their side so that if they vomit, it comes out of their mouth. I don't know the name of the university. There was a kid who they just thought he had passed out drunk, and they found him like 6 hours later and he was dead. Alcohol intoxication poisoning. Guys, oh my gosh. And girls. Be very, very careful. The number of young women who are the victims of date rape. My heart aches. It happened to a former student of mine who had had some drinks with a guy who was a friend of hers. And they went back to her dorm room. And she decided, and he forced himself on her. It happens way too much, so be careful. All right, so the things that can pass directly through the lining of the stomach. The things that go directly through the lining of the stomach. Where am I going to write this? I'm running out of space. I'm going to put it over here, okay? Okay? Put a star there. Alcohol. Aspirin. Aspirin can go through some salts. And ibuprofen. That's why they say aspirin's tough on your stomach. Ibuprofen can be tough on your stomach. Take it with food. Okay? So there I put a little star there and a little star there so you know. And it doesn't have to be in a different color. It's up to you. Now, you want acid staying in your stomach. You want food, once it gets into your stomach, staying in your stomach. So at the front end and at the back end of your stomach, you have two muscles called sphincters. So I'll label them number 1 and number 2. Okay? Okay, number 1 is called I always learned it as the cardiac sphincter. But your textbook calls it, and the lab yesterday called it the gastroesophageal sphincter, I believe. So acid reflux is when stomach contents gets up into your esophagus and it burns. Gastroesophageal reflux disorder, GERD. Heartburn. You feel it as a burning sensation. Sometimes it'll be an ache. Sometimes you feel like you have a lump in your throat. Like your food is still just sitting there. This happens a lot if you lay down after eating a big meal. It happens with age. It happens with obesity. It happens with when women are pregnant. And so what most people do, if it's just an occasional thing, you take an antacid, which is a tablet you chew on and swallow it. And it's sodium bicarbonate, basically baking soda, which neutralizes some of the acid and it gets rid of the symptoms. But if you're doing that all the time and you're constantly trying to neutralize acid, your stomach will just produce more acid as a result because pepsin can't work without acid. If you have constant chronic reflux, or because of stress you have too much stomach acid, then you take something like Pepsid AC, or omeprazole is the actual name. And that makes your gastric glands calm down. The glands that secrete the acid. Makes them cool their jets. And so you don't produce as much stomach acid. So when I was pregnant with my second child and I was 38 years old and my body was a little bit older and more worn out, I started getting really, really bad gastric reflux. And after my daughter was born, it didn't go away. And so every week, by the end of the week, I lost my voice. And I thought, oh my God, it's just all these years of teaching. What it really was as the week progressed and I was talking, and the acid that was coming up and sitting on my vocal cords every night was burning my vocal cords. And so I had to go on medication to calm my stomach acid. This area here, and I'm going to put it in like highlighter. This area of your anatomy would actually be sitting, the diaphragm would be sitting right there. And so your stomach is below your diaphragm. You can get a type of hernia where your stomach actually pokes up through, and that's called a hiatal hernia. I'm giving you so much amazing information. It's amazing. I think I'm just going to play this video for my next class and not even talk. Just have them do the video. Because this is like perfect. I can't make it any better than this. All right. So, sphincter number 2. So, you know, a sphincter says what? Nothing. A sphincter doesn't say anything, actually. A sphincter is a muscle that when it contracts, it closes the diameter of an opening. Okay? A sphincter, when it contracts, it's going to close. And so you have another sphincter at the end of the stomach. Anybody remember from the lab yesterday what that one's called? Starts with a P. The pyloric sphincter. Oops, I misspelled it. No. No, no, no. I didn't wipe everything away.
You were just saying.
All right, so the other stuff is still captured, and it's going to be on there. I'm going to resume right from here. So, SPHINCTER. I don't know what happened. So this second one here is the pyloric sphincter, and that keeps food moving on through. All right, at this point, our little brown ball of food, okay, is called chyme. CHYME, chyme. CHYME. It passes through the pyloric sphincter and moves into the small intestine. How long does food stay in the stomach? About 4 hours. So we were, in the mouth, seconds, depending on how long you chew. The trip down the esophagus, about 9 seconds. About 4 hours in your stomach, depending upon the protein content of the food. You know that saying, oh, eat Chinese food, you'll be hungry in another hour? That's because a lot of Chinese food in the United States is very high in carbohydrates. Carbohydrates move fairly quickly through your stomach. Proteins will stay longer. So when you're eating breakfast, choose to eat a breakfast that's higher in protein content, and you'll feel full longer because it has to sit in your stomach and digest. So steak and eggs is great. Okay? Eggs. Eggs are like the most perfect package of protein you could get. All right, so I had labeled all my parts with purple, right? So pancreas, and this was my gallbladder, and this was my liver. Shh. Here's our small intestine. We have the waves of peristalsis moving stuff on down. Now, inside of our small intestine, what is happening? We have 3 sections, the duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum. To help you remember that, remember, don't jump in. Okay, don't jump in to help you with the names of the 3 sections. Duodenum, jejunum, and ileum. Okay? Duodenum, D-U-O, D-E-N-U-M. Jejunum, J-E-J-U-N-U-M. Ileum, I-L-E-U-M. Okay, at the surface, looking at the outside of these 3 sections of the small intestine, you would never be able to tell a difference. Okay? The difference in these 3 sections is the histological difference, so a tissue level difference. They all look the same on the outside. Recall when we talked about the relationship between the lymphatic system and the digestive system. Just like you had rugae to increase the size, the capacity of the stomach, on the wall of the small intestine, you have these little finger-like projections. What are they called? Do you remember? The villi. And if I look at the surface of a villi, on the surface of the villi, it's all fuzzy. It looks like a super plush carpet. So the villi have villi. So these are called the villi. And the villi have villi, which are called microvilli. They're very small villi. So villi with villi on them, they're called microvilli. And this makes it so that you guys have seen those, a terry cloth towel has little loops of fabric on it. And then you see those microfiber towels that are super, super fuzzy. Okay, and they soak up a whole lot of water. Well, it's the same reason you have these microvilli in your small intestine. It's so that you can soak up as much, okay, you guys are talking over me, so that you can soak up as much nutrients out of your intestines. Is your paper getting really full? No. Yes and no? Okay, so why don't we, you can go onto the back side so that we have a little bit more space to write, or a separate piece of paper, because I want to talk to you about the hormones and what is in your small intestine, okay? So, I said a bad word. I hope it didn't pick it up on the screen. I did. I apologize, you guys, if I said the bad word and you heard it. Okay, so your small intestine releases a hormone called secretin. That comes from the small intestine, okay? So this is all that's taking place in the small intestine. I said a really bad word. I hope it didn't pick it up. The baddest word. Yeah. Because I thought my screen, I lost everything again, so we'll see. So, secretin, when secretin is released, your small intestine releases the following hormones. I'm sorry, these are all enzymes. Trypsin breaks down proteins. And in case you don't remember, proteins break down into amino acids. Because proteins are too big to get through the wall of the villi, but amino acids with active transport can. So we have trypsin, lipase, breaks down lipids into their fatty acids. That gets absorbed into your lacteals. Amylase comes around again. Amylase breaks down starch. Into monosaccharides. Okay, and all of these things get absorbed. Now, if you, it depends on where you want to write it, but the pancreas, you can put it on your diagram or to the side. It doesn't matter to me. The pancreas secretes digestive enzymes. And so the trypsin, the lipase, and the amylase and buffers, those all come from the pancreas. Okay, so these are made by the pancreas. And then all of these things are secreted into the small intestine when they're stimulated by our hormone secretin. What does a buffer do? The buffers neutralize the pH. No problem. So they neutralize the pH from the stomach. We also have the liver. And the liver produces bile. The bile gets stored, it goes to the gallbladder, and then it gets secreted from the gallbladder into the small intestine as well. And bile emulsifies fats. So I'll give you a visual. So you have a big glob of fats, and it's too big for the enzymes, the lipase, to work on it effectively. And so this breaks down chunks of fat into little pieces. Little droplets. So that's what emulsification is. Cheers, Haggerty.
Cheers.
Enjoy your cup of coffee.
Thank you.
Tastes mighty good today.
You want an example?
So if you are, as you age, a female, fat, fertile, and in your 40s, those are the people that are at highest risk for gallbladder issues. And so if you have to have your gallbladder taken out, you got to be careful about your fat intake, because now you don't have, your liver's still producing the bile, but it's not stored, and you'll get diarrhea if you eat too much fats. Did you have another example?
Well, just like for fat, like.
Oh, emulsification?
Yeah, for emulsification. That's what soap does.
Yes, breaks down fat droplets.
Yeah, so like, your mom cooked, and it has a big pan of fat from like making steak or burgers or whatever. So you have all that oil that is in a pan. What do you add to the pan to get rid of the oil?
Soap, right?
Soap. So what does the soap do that helps get rid of it? It breaks it down into small globules that allows for the water
To wash it away.
to wash away the fat. That's the same thing with your hands. When your hands are covered in fat, like, you've been working on something, the soap is an emulsifier. It breaks down the fat into small little globules that it breaks down the sink. It's not magic.
I prefer to think of it as magic, though.
Okay? Another way you can think about it is like eating candy, right? If you have a big Jolly Rancher, that's a big piece. But if you want to eat it really fast, what do? You chew it and break it into smaller pieces. You're mechanically emulsifying it to be able to dissolve it faster.
Yep. So, I'm sure a lot of you somebody who's had to have their gallbladder taken out. I'm sure that's another part we can live without, and I'm sure at some point in my life I'll be losing that too. Take it right. I don't know. Maybe I should just say, is there anything else you can take out while I'm under so I don't have to have another surgery? I think they're going to have to take the metal out, so I'm going to talk to my podiatrist. Can you just, while I'm out, just take the metal out of my ankle too this summer? Take out any parts I don't need. So, now here's a gross thing. If you vomit really, really, really hard, and you've vomited and all of your stomach contents have come out, and then you keep heaving, dry heaves they call it, you keep heaving, and then you get this small amount of this greenish stuff, and it tastes like it's green, it'll be foamy, it'll be like chalky, very bitter on the back of your throat. That's bile. You've now vomited so hard that the peristalsis has moved stuff from your small intestine into your stomach, and then from your stomach on out. May you never throw up that hard, but it is possible. Okay. So now we're in. So how long are your intestines? Long enough? They're about 18 feet long. And food spends about 12 hours in your small intestines. Give or take. So there is the reason for my surprise when my husband saw the remains of the marinade that I'd used on the chicken so quickly. Because if you're spending, 4 hours in the stomach and 12 hours and then another 4 to 12 hours in your large intestine, I mean, geez, it's moving through really quick. It's not like food in, food out, typically. Okay, we're almost there. At the end here, we have another valve. We're going to number this one number 3. This one, number 3, is the ileocecal valve. And I always want to spell this wrong. Yeah, C-E-C-A-L. Ileocecal valve. It's between the ileum and the cecum because the first part of the large intestine is called the cecum. And you can add, if you'd like, a little pouch hanging off the end. There's the appendix. Also called the veriform appendix, which means the worm-like looking structure. Okay, so we listed the things that were absorbed in the small intestine. It's going to be amino acids, fatty acids, monosaccharides, all of those things. Now we get into the large intestine. What is the large intestine going to be absorbing? So we have some things that happen in the large intestine, the functions of the large intestine. First of all, we have absorption, segmentation, and elimination. Okay, absorption, segmentation, and elimination. These are the 3 big processes that are happening in the large intestine. So, what's being absorbed? Okay. I'll rewrite them all over again, okay? So, absorption. This again is in the large intestine. You already absorbed your nutrients out of your food in the small intestine. In the large intestine, we're going to absorb water, vitamins, especially vitamin K, and minerals. You have E. coli, Escherichia coli, it's a bacteria that lives in your intestines that helps you to make vitamin K. It's natural to be in your large intestine. We get E. coli poisoning when we get E. coli in our stomachs. So that's why bad hand washing and then making food. If you go to the bathroom, number 2, and you don't wash your hands, you could have E. coli bacteria on your hands, and then you go and you prepare someone's salad. And now, or you wash the salad with water that is contaminated. And that happens a lot in developing countries where they don't have clean water. And so that's why you need to be cautious in developing countries.
Also backflow in restaurants.
Backflow? Like sewage?
No, like when 2 pipes are kind of like connected into 2 different water sources, and then it just, something weird happens, like the pressure levels, and then
Oh, well, God, the sewer line should never.
not the sewer line,
Oh,
but it's just like in sinks and stuff.
oh, okay. Ugh. All right. I want to make sure. Okay, so absorption. So you're absorbing. So the longer your food stays in your large intestine, the more water is going to get absorbed out of it. And that's why if you are going to the bathroom and the water gets absorbed out of your stool, you're going to get constipated. It'll be really hard for you to go to the bathroom. The next thing is compaction and segmentation. Oh, you want to go to sleep? Thanks. So, compaction. Your poo gets compacted into turds. And then instead of one really ginormous long turd, you get it segmented into pieces. Okay? A piece of fecal material. So you have muscles in two directions. Okay? Horizontal and perpendicular, okay, and vertical, so that you can move it on through, but then also segment it. And then we have elimination. Elimination is where you're going to move that material on out. So this is going to be undigested food, fiber, bacteria, dead intestinal cells, mucus. All of this is feces. At your anus, you have two sphincters. You have an internal and an external sphincter. So this is your anus, right? And there's the actual opening. Okay. So the internal sphincter is made out of smooth muscle. The external sphincter is made out of skeletal muscle. What does that mean? One, not force. One is under voluntary control and one is not. Which one do we learn how to control when we get potty trained? The external sphincter, because it's under skeletal muscle control. Now, you all know when you have the sensation, I've got to go to the bathroom. You know the sensation, I've got to go to the bathroom now. Oh my God, I'm going to the bathroom now. Right? There's a difference. So when that external sphincter is all that's holding things together, it can only go so long, right? Because that internal sphincter, the pressure of the feces on the internal sphincter says, oh, it's time to go to the bathroom, and it starts to loosen. And that external one says, oh no, you're at school. You can't go at school. Oh, believe me, if you ever really got to go, you've got to go, and you're just hoping for a toilet somewhere. Okay. Or you go to the one in the nurse's office.
Yes.
Okay. So, think about this crazy thought. It would be possible to swallow a little camera on a long, long cord and watch this whole trip and have the cord going in and then have the cord coming out, and it would be continuous. Okay, so that was a 64-minute lecture with all of the glitches. Okay, It's long. I'm tired. I usually can't get this all done in one day, but because of our blocked schedule, I could. So the beauty of this is going to be up on Google Classroom. You can listen to it again for my funny jokes. Did we pretty much fill up our whole paper? Yes. All right.
That was very informational.
All right. Say thank you to your gastro.